hobbling here. She's like had an accident. She's still here. She's amazing. So the corporates, this is, I think, very exciting. We know Accenture is also in town doing a fintech accelerator, but Swire is now getting involved in doing a B2B accelerator over in Quarry Bay. Whole new big space, 20,000 square feet or something crazy like that, with giant fancy Coca-Cola bottles and Heineken or whatever inside. But so, Hilary, tell us, what do you see in the next 5 years? Is this the beginning? I mean, it looks like KPMG is going all in with this. So is Swire and your subsidiary companies and other corporates, are they getting into startups? Is this what they're, what we're going to be prepared to see? Will all your competitors get into this kind of acceleration market and leveraging their network to help startups grow out of Hong Kong?
I mean, yeah, absolutely. I think there's interest among a lot of big companies out here to get involved with startups and figure out which way makes sense for them to interact and work with startups. First on, it's the accelerator. We're lucky at Swire. One of our biggest assets is property, is space, and that's an important asset to share with startups. So we're able to do that. And because of our tenant base is so diverse, it made sense to do a B2B agnostic approach. So not focused on just data analytics or a particular, finance, for example. But I think we will see, as you said, Accenture and so on. But I think for companies who, it doesn't make sense to run an accelerator, it's a big commitment. You've got to staff with people who know what they're doing so that they can actually help the founders in a meaningful way and make it sustainable for the ecosystem. So educating them on what's a good investment, which is a good way to tackle the market, connecting them with the right folks. It's not simply just kind of opening up the space and inviting folks in. So I think we'll see a lot of corporates figuring out ways that make sense for them to work with startups, and whether that's sponsoring existing programs or working with KPMG and the like, whether it's funding angel groups or more established funds, launching their own corporate VC, or even just changing up their sales team and their kind of acquisition cycles so that it's more startup friendly. But absolutely, I think it's not a fad, it's here to stay.
Okay, great. So bouncing into education, this is awesome. Just boom, right into Allison's court. Allison, of course, I know you from General Assembly. And now you've done angel investing, and also you're also like to talk about more women entrepreneurs. Do you see in the next 5 years that we will see? I'm sorry, we tried to find more women entrepreneurs in that last pitch panel. It was hard to find, so don't blame me. Okay, don't blame Jean. It's okay. But let's see, Allison, what do you think? I mean, you obviously are talking more to the female entrepreneurs, and maybe Hilary can jump into and see what kind of new companies are coming into the blueprint. But what do you see? Will we see more female entrepreneurs in Hong Kong? And if not, why not?
I think we definitely will. Part of it is getting more women into tech, and part of it is getting more women into venture. And so, investing in startups is a high-risk business. And in order to mitigate risk, we are naturally attracted to people that we see ourselves in, because we know how we act, and so we believe we know how they'll act. And only 4% of venture capital decision makers are women. So we need to see that number come up before we see more companies getting funded. But I think it's also about putting together a good team on both the venture side and the startup side. And so we almost exclusively invest in companies where there are more than one founders, because diversity allows you to see things from multiple perspectives, which we see is, again, a way to mitigate risk. And so at this point, 45% of our companies have at least one female co-founder. But that number looks great because they're co-founders, because they're part of a team. So I think that's a big part of it. And that was really only possible because we're a team of two as well. So we have one male investor, one female investor. So I think we will see more.
Hilary and Duncan, do you guys see a lot of female applicants to your accelerators?
Yeah, I think it's still a minority, absolutely. But I've been pleasantly surprised, actually.
You'd think it would be shopping and stuff. You'd think, no, that's sexist. Who would say that? Oh, sorry. Just kidding. How about you, Duncan?
So interestingly, kind of mechatronics and the tech world is kind of has had a history of being dominated by mail, but actually we're seeing a complete difference. Like Allison, you were there, right, at our place. 40% of our teams from last year had female co-founders, and 2 of those were in robotics. So that's kind of an interesting trend. That wasn't something we did deliberately. It's just something that we're seeing with the really quality applicants that are coming in. There's a lot of female co-founders.
So Elad, I just met you on LinkedIn not too long ago, and you are telling me that in the next 5 years, you want to bring a lot more Israeli startups to Hong Kong. So we know that the UK are trying to bring people out here and also trying to take people out to the UK. I want to know from you, what do you see as the next 5 years? Do you think that Israel has something to learn from Hong Kong / into China? Or what is your thinking in the next 5 years coming from your neck of the woods into to ours?
Yes, Casey, thank you. In Israel, we are leading the world in per capita startups. So these guys need to go somewhere. And right now they're going to the US, they're going to Europe, and we want more of them to come here to Hong Kong and to enter from here into China. This is why we're trying to attract more Israeli startups to come here, to meet up guys like you, to meet venture capital, to get funded here, and then together go into China. I think this will be a growing trend, and we as a government entity, we're trying to support this trend, because it seems that it's not happening naturally, like it happened in the US. For instance, just in New York City, we have hundreds of Israeli startups that are working there. And these are Israelis that left their houses, went to New York. We want to see hundreds of Israeli startups here in Hong Kong in the next 5 years.
So what would be the attractive point to having them come here, though?
This year, we're expecting $1 billion US in tech investments from China in Israel.
In Israel?
In Israeli companies. So, if we see so much interest in China, and the Israelis, they're not very familiar with the Chinese, with the culture, why not go through Hong Kong into China? The funding is obviously coming already from China. You know, this year it's going to be 1 billion. I think that this next year it's going to be 2 billion. And it's growing exponentially, or linear, whatever. But, and I'm an engineer, right? But anyway, we see a lot of interest from the Chinese side, and I think that Hong Kong can play a very important role in taking the Israeli startups into China and into Asia in general.
You're keeping your eye on the world, though. What do you think of people coming from London, from the US, coming into Hong Kong as well? Do you think there might be a huge melting pot, or will there be acceptance of one type of group coming in?
I think it's definitely going to be more from English-speaking countries, because it's easier. And it's already, you know, it's already happening. You see so many people from the UK, from the US coming here. So I think that we talked about, maybe you asked maybe somebody's coming from Berlin or from Italy. I'm not sure it's going to happen because there's a big culture gap, there's a language gap. So I'm not sure, maybe in 10 years or maybe more. But I do feel that people are going to be attracted to Hong Kong as a gateway to China. And the more capital we see here, and the more people involved in the ecosystem here, it will attract more people.
Duncan, what kind of people do you have applying to come to see you in Accelerator? Because it's right there in Shenzhen, and I believe the allure is that you're right in China, so if you want to make some hardware, go to where the factories are. What kind of people do you see coming into this region? Like, are they from America, are they from Europe, where are they from?
Okay, so statistically, we're 60% from North America, 20% Asia, and 20% Europe. And of that 20% in Asia, half are actually mainland Chinese. The rest are either kind of Singapore or Japan, one side from Hong Kong. And the types of people are predominantly, because of kind of the emergence of tech hardware, connected devices, people who are making things, previously were engineers, now they're software developers as well, which is a really interesting trend for us to see, and something which obviously is a huge software tech explosion in America. That's helped to actually feed in hardware startups.
I know it's hard to keep bringing it back to today, but what do you see in 5 years? So do you see there'll be more, the same kind of 60% coming from North America? Or would you see like the Japanese will start coming down? What do you think of, because when you see robots, Japan is the robot capital, right? Are they going to get in on the business over here?
I mean, the Japanese robots tend to be centered around innovation in Japan, kind of a Galapagos kind of syndrome. And really, I see actually China being one of the biggest explosions of of robotic hardware technology. Because I mean, there's so many young kids coming up through the education platform, then going out to America, coming back, they speak the language, they're really smart, and they've got some great ideas in a new emerging economy, which is China.
Sam, you've gone to almost every city here in Asia with Uber. And you've seen the difficulties of entering like China and Southeast Asia. In 5 years, what would you think would be the country that will loosen up and become a greater partner for Hong Kong startups to go to? Something that's easier to get in. I think China, and I'll ask Jermaine this question as well, I think China's still not that easy. The stuff Jermaine just said sounds like very difficult already for Hong Kong people to think about paying extra money for taxis and stuff like that. So from your experience, because you've been everywhere now, what would you think would be our next best partner here? Singapore, Malaysia, what do you think?
We found that China has actually been really welcoming for our business. It's been a great market for us. I can speak mainly on kind of behalf of our business and what's worked really well, but Taiwan's been a very friendly market. China, Singapore has been incredibly open. And I think we look at this from a lot of different perspectives, from how are the consumers to how is the regulatory environment to how easy is it to just build a business. And yeah, Taipei has been fantastic. Singapore's been great. Like I said, China until now, I think there are a ton of enormous difficulties about doing business in China. Mainly just that the platforms that everyone uses are totally different for a global company, so you have to rebuild yourself. But a lot of the factors that make other places difficult haven't been difficult there. So those markets stick out to me. Bangkok's been good to us as well. A lot of it is really just about talent, I think. I mean, if you have a good product and you get good local people in these markets, then you can really work with the systems to be fantastic. So I think it's about where do you have talent who understands the global environment and understands the local market well.
Anson's talking about connecting devices going to be billions, right? So where do you think that's going to be mostly? Oh, Anson and for Sam, because you need a lot of connected devices to be using the sharing economy, using apps and things like that. So what do you guys are seeing? Both of you can answer this. What do you see as the place to be? That's kind of the question I was asking. It's like, where are we going to next? Because everybody's going to have one of these. Is it Indonesia? They got, I think, 250 million people. Are they going to be running around with this in 5 years or what?
I mean, for us, I've been amazed at how little smartphone penetration has been an issue for us. Ho Chi Minh City is one of the fastest growing cities we've ever had. I think the bigger issue is probably more on the payment side. It is credit card penetration, but for us to get to the place that we are, these have not been huge hurdles. Smartphone penetration, not at all. Credit card penetration, a little bit in places like India. I mean, it keeps you out of a place like Bangladesh. Like, there are places that credit card penetration can really hold you back. But we've taken this view that the world is going to get credit cards and the world is going to get smartphones very, very quickly. And that view has been the right decision in every market we've been in.
Yeah, Casey, just to echo what Sam's saying as well. I mean, I think we have to remember smartphone penetration in China. This year, the number of new smartphones, we're looking at 600 million smartphones in China. Yesterday, Singles Day, produced 50 billion renminbi in sales.
What is Singles Day?
Singles Day.
$1 bill day.
Singles Day, 11/11. It was for all of those.
Everybody knows what it is already.
Everybody knows what Singles Day is. But yeah.
That's happy or sad, I'm not sure.
I'm going to tell a funny story. I don't know if you saw in the newspaper yesterday. This guy decided that he was going to spend his life savings on smartphones. He bought something ridiculous like 99, is it 99? 99 smartphones, put them out in a nice little heart shape, proposed to his girlfriend, and she said, no.
That's why it's called Singles Day.
That's right. Boom, kaboom. So yeah, he's obviously still single.
Better luck next year.
That's right. Better luck next year. But for me, what is amazing, Casey, is that with the likes of smartphones with Xiaomi. I mean, again, you look at Xiaomi, and that brand was not around just a few years ago. And I think what we are going to see is the speed and the speed of change, how things happen so quickly. And I happen to think that China, particularly in China, we see things moving a lot more quickly. So yeah, greater connectivity. The consumers being able to buy anytime, any place, anywhere. Just interconnected like we've never seen before.
Any questions from the audience? Right here.
So this is kind of for Duncan, first of all. Where do you see the state of investments in hardware compared to software at the moment and going forward? And then for the investors kind of on the panel, where do you see, what's your kind of view on that as well?
Okay, so it's emerging. Obviously there's a huge boom of software investment, and it's kind of, I guess reaching a point where people are looking at what are the alternatives, and a lot of people actually see hardware as more of an extension of the value that software is providing in many cases. So we're seeing, software companies acquiring hardware companies like Google acquiring Nest, Facebook acquiring Oculus. And that's the same for investment size. I can't speak for all investment, but a lot of investors, traditionally, who understand the software market and the value that's being created from connected devices, start to actually see opportunities where hardware becomes a really core component of that. And I don't think there's any limit in that.
We think about it actually as hardware-enabled software. So any hardware company we invest in, we want to see how we're a small fund, so we look for capital-efficient businesses, and the hardware can be very expensive to develop over time. But if you have some sort of scalable element to your business, which is typically software, the hardware can be a really smart marketing tactic, way to get inside, classrooms or businesses. One of our companies is called Swivel, and it's a robotics platform where there's a robot, basically, a little device where you put your smartphone or your tablet, and then a teacher will put something around their neck, and they record the classroom, and the robot will follow them around. So it's basically automatic content capturing. But the really interesting part about it is the cloud software that they've developed, where you can actually automatically edit the content that you've uploaded and share it very selectively. And so I think that's an example of a company that you might look at and say, oh, robots. But actually it's a lot more than that, and I think that's where it's going. And there's a lot of opportunity in Asia where investors really understand hardware. I think they get it because it's physical. Manufacturing has always been really big in China, and so I think we're going to see more and more investment into that space for sure.
Questions? Yes.
Question primarily to Sam and anyone else that wants to chip in. What are the main differences of problems Uber is facing in Asia compared to the US? Government, taxi industry, anything else you want to mention?
Sure. It's
The future.
in 2019. No, it's a good question. When I speak about Uber Asia compared to Uber Global, I think the thing that's amazed me most has been more the similarities than the differences. I think our users want similar things. They want safety, they want reliability. They prefer a driver who opens the door for them than one that doesn't. And that's, I ran our European expansion before Asia, so those were all the same. Drivers are very similar. They all want security. I think they want security, they want to make more money. Regulatory, I think places like Miami, Florida, and Las Vegas have been more difficult than almost anything we've seen in Asia. So kind of regulators that really look out for special interest groups as opposed to consumers and safety are, I think, just as prevalent in other parts of the world as they are in Asia. So the biggest, my biggest takeaway when I think about Asia and the world has been primarily the similarities. I think, the difference is one is you just have a much, if you want to go mass market, you have a much lower cost product that becomes really, really important. If in India, in some of our cities in India, the average fare is $2. And you kind of, for a company like Uber, that, we give drivers the phones right now. So you're giving someone an iPhone. You have to do like 400 trips before you make back the cost of the iPhone. So I think you kind of have to change your business model a little bit to cater to a lot, a place like India, a place like Malaysia, Manila. I mean, these have all been incredibly good markets for us because safety is so important in these places and a real pain point. But for us, we've had to go in and tweak our model to find any way to be profitable there because the costs are so, or our revenue is so low. That's me, but again, the thing that amazes me is how similar the business is everywhere, and how similar the consumers are, as well as the drivers, and it was not my expectation.
Any other questions from the audience? Yes.
Jeremy, the connected device you mentioned about eventually going to data analytics, this is the way we have to go. Based on your opinion, what is your most coming market or desirable market other than smart home or Nest or Duncan, Google purchase? Other than that, do you have something in your mind or focus or priority that connected devices? Where is best applicable in the market domain?
Good question. I think for us, in terms of data analytics, there's a lot of related industries. We were talking about wearables, weren't we, earlier on. We're working with some companies right now in that wearables technology space, and it's the collaboration as well that is going to be vitally important, because we're now talking and working on some projects with some of the big insurance companies, and they're now starting to really understand about better connectivity, but also better understanding the consumers. So in the future, we're going to see some really interesting projects around insurance premiums, for example, and how, with the use of wearable technology, your insurance premium is going to be X. Now, obviously, if you are guys like Casey and myself, sorry, Casey, our insurance premiums are way high. But obviously, if you're fit young guys like Sam, and his insurance premium is going to be a lot lower than our insurance premium. Units of alcohol, cigarettes, fatty food, all of these things, they're all going to be monitored. But joking apart, that's where I think it's interesting on the data analytics side. We're now starting to see this whole holy grail of understanding the consumer, understanding your customer, and I think that's very, very exciting.
Has any study or expectation about the privacy invasion by those connected devices?
We do a global. In fact, if you have a look at inside the PACS, there's a global technology survey, and I think the younger generation, they don't really care too much about. Older generation, old guys like me and Casey. We care, right, Casey? We care.
We definitely care.
We definitely care. But young guys like Sam, Hilary, Allison.
Hilary's a girl. Okay, sit down now. Elad, give him a second.
I just wanted to add that with the data, the big data, it's not just going to affect the consumers. It's going to affect everything. So going back to Danny's company, if you go to medical devices or data analytics for healthcare, it's going to change the world. I saw Charles somewhere from Invest Hong Kong. We were yesterday at the Start Me Up Hong Kong competition, and one of the companies presented big data for manufacturing. So actually, if you have a factory, they collect data and they tell you what's wrong with your factory. So the efficiency goes higher. So the big data is, I think, it's going to revolutionize everything that we see, everything that we do. And I don't want to be a prophet. Sorry, not prophet. That's different. But I think it's very hard to see what will come up in 5 years or 10 years, because if we would have sat here 5 years ago, probably none of us would have thought that Uber, would work, or Global Van or whatever. So I think it's very hard to predict, but I think it's going to be transforming to everything that we see here today.
One point I could make on this, on the connected devices and healthcare also, and data-wise as well, in the next 5 years, 5 to 10 years, I believe that basically when you go travel anywhere, your health records will be on your phone, right? So no matter where you go, or whatever happens to you, you see a doctor say, look at your health records, and then basically you can get a diagnosis that way. That's the future-wise, right? That's going to come sooner than later.
And it's that predictive analytics side of things, which is also interesting, because you'll be walking along, Casey, with your little wearable and say,